Money is not neutral. It carries culture, history, and expectations.
Join us for honest conversations about the real costs behind how we live, love, give, and just survive in this complex world.
Money. It is not black or white.
Powered by GoTyme.
Inna Mapalomaku.
And I'm Maya Fisher-French. Welcome to our podcast. So Mapalo, today we're going to be talking about weddings. How much do they cost? How much should you be spending? And how much is too much? And I would just like you to note, and for those of you who are listening and not watching, I'm in a beautiful dress.
Very beautiful, gorgeous dress.
I'm normally in like pants and a top, right? Yeah. And the reason I'm wearing this dress is this is the dress I bought for my niece's wedding. So weddings are not just about the cost to the bride and groom, but also to the poor guests who have to wear special outfits and have to buy presents. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well.
I'm very excited for this conversation, Maya, because we both asked our audience how much they spent on their weddings, and we have some very interesting answers.
Well, let's start with that actually, because it was quite an interesting range that we got. So one of my followers said, I didn't even have a lavish wedding, but honestly, I could have bought a Merc C-Class cash, and I'm savvy with money. That's why you must either only do it once, or if you do it a second time, home affairs and dinner for eight, right? And I had another one saying, well, she's getting married a second time, but also budgeted 35,000 for it. Like not going there. That's it.
I have one who said they spent 350,000 rands and she does not regret it. And it was the best day of her life. And you know, there's a show, was this your best wedding? This was my best wedding. Yeah.
So let's just hope that's the only wedding she's ever going to have. Yeah. But I think let's unpack that, because I think it is about personality. It is about what you want. But again, it is all about doing it in a way that doesn't harm you financially. So I got married very young. Okay, we were 22 when we got married.
Babies, man.
We were babies. I mean,
you were a child bride, Maya.
I'm a child bride. The fact my mother let us get married is amazing. My son is now 22. And
imagine.
I don't know. What was
actually putting it that way seems absolutely insane.
Because you know my son.
And he's a responsible young man. He's fine. But marriage.
I
would not encourage it. Yeah. But anyway, okay. You get married at 22.
We're still married.
Yeah.
So just by the way, it doesn't mean anything getting married young. Some people getting married young, they get divorced. Some, like us, are still married.
Yeah.
But we had no money. And we did not, my father had passed away many years before. My mom didn't have any money. My husband's parents were not in a place to support us at all. So we had to save. We didn't even have real jobs yet. So we had to actually pay for our own wedding. And I remember distinctly that it cost us 50 Rand a head. Okay, this was 100 years ago.
50 bucks.
50 bucks.
What would you get for 50 bucks today?
I know, and I hired my dress. I had a beautiful designer dress, and I must admit my mom did pay for that. My mom said, how do you feel when you're in that dress? I said, Mom, I feel like a princess. And she said, okay, I'll pay for it. So she did pay for the hiring costs of that dress. But that was one way also of cutting costs. And I suppose we're quite lucky in the sort of white culture because we only have to do one wedding.
But even before that, Maya, you keep on mentioning my parents were not in a position to do the wedding. Is it culturally like something that you guys do? The parents pay for the wedding?
So, in theory, the bride's family pay for the wedding.
The brides,
not the
Why not the man's family?
So you see, very big difference. So the bride's family pay for it, and if the groom contributes, it's usually the bar, the drinks. That's what the groom would do. So it falls to the bride's family to do the dress, the bridesmaids, the whole thing. And I mean, there are people who save up for their daughters' weddings because they know it's coming. I've actually got a friend whose 3 daughters all got married in 1 year. So it gets very, very expensive. But I think nowadays, a lot of people are paying for their own wedding.
Yeah. So I think certainly with me when we got married, I think just culturally, there are so many differences. First of all, there is the whole Lobola thing. And right now, people are hyping up Lobola negotiations. They are cooking. They are hiring tents just for the Lobola negotiation. And that is something that we do not grow up with. You know, even when I had my wedding, it's supposed to be hush-hush. families, two families meeting together. But now you see people going all out, Lobola, which I think is a little bit absurd. But anyway, so there's that. Then when you've concluded that, yes, we agree on the bride price and the Lobola and, all of those things, then there is the traditional wedding, and then there is what we call the white wedding. And the traditional wedding, there's two, because now you're celebrating two traditions. So the wedding will be at my house, then we have the white wedding, then another wedding at your partner's house. So sometimes it ends up being three, but I had two because my parents said, that is madness. We're not going to do that. When everything was concluded, the first traditional wedding we had at a house, and my mom just basically cooked stamp and meat and had people, ginger beer, and that was it.
And how many people came to that?
No, it wasn't a lot of people. I mean, I remember very well, it was myself and a couple of friends of ours sitting in our sitting room. We didn't hire no chairs, we didn't hire a tent, nothing. My mom is the one, and some family members, some aunts and family friends who came to help her cook. So she made that by herself, and we just all cooked in the morning. And that was
it's quite a low-key.
Very, very.
But is that normal? Would it be low-key for most people?
Not quite. But I think what I've observed, a lot of people choose to just have two big ones. The other one is a bit more muted, right? Because things are expensive, honestly. So if you have the finances, or some people really push to have the full thing. But I guarantee a lot of more people are doing just two. But I mean, even then, that's still quite expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Okay.
And then the white wedding, we had
So yes, then we had the white wedding. But I was very lucky in that we found a venue that was off the beaten track. The guy had this massive plot within the mountains. We're married in the Free State, between mountains and a river. And he gave it to us for like 2,500. So I know for sure that our wedding would have cost us way more money had we hired a venue. So we got one massive tent, like a little marquee seating we hired, but it brought down our costs so much more. Because, I mean, when we're looking at just how much it was going to cost, it was going for like 1,200 rand per person. Then that would have just sent the expenses off the roof. But in any case, we didn't have money. We did not have money to do that. And our parents were not in a position also to pay for the wedding. Then there's a little thing that is called the Lobola payment. That
yes,
Lobola
you see, we don't have that. We're going to get on to engagement rings, which quite frankly, I think is practically a Lobola payment. But yeah.
We have the Lobola. So remember, both families agree on the Lobola price. So let's say it is 5,000 as an example. Now, the contention with a lot of people is, okay, where's that 5,000 going? Is it just a gift to the bride's parents, or is the money supposed to be used for the wedding? And yay, Maya, people will bite your head off if you said what they don't believe in. But for me, my parents said, you guys are starting out in life. This money should go towards the wedding. So they used every last bit of that Lobola money towards making sure that the wedding happens. And my mom, she loves Excel spreadsheets like me. She has her little notebook. She was writing, okay, we have paid for this, we have done this, we have done this. Okay, now you can see the rest.
So it's interesting you say that, because I was reading a survey that it's an annual survey they do around financial access and things like that. And they spoke about how Lobola is often seen as a retirement plan for parents. So they've got daughters and they're saying, well, at least we know when they get married, we'll get some money in. So they don't see that money as going to the family, the daughter. They see that money as coming to them to help them with their retirement fund.
It's sort of like, oh, we've done all of this for our child, so now we're going to get...
It's a return on investment.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets contentious, because you could be, as the man, marrying into a family like yours, where it was a nominal amount and it was just, it was just traditional. Or you be marrying into a family that has decided they're going to maximize the amount of money they can get out of you.
There have been incidences where there's a complete breakdown of those negotiations because people are asking for ridiculous amounts. And I imagine we are both young, we're just starting out in our lives, and people are asking for 500,000, 600,000. I mean, what in the cahoots? And then there are the two traditional weddings, the white wedding, it starts adding up. So we did the white wedding, then we did the traditional wedding at in Soweto. So all of that, I think we spent around 120,000, Maya. Because, we had this conversation with...
Is that including the Lobola?
Because remember...
The Lobola went back into the wedding, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, we're kind of talking like, okay, we had quite a lovely wedding. How did we get to like a smaller number? Definitely the venue wasn't a big thing. And also, he has a family member who hires our tents. So they gave us at a very low price. So it came to 120,000. And our wedding was big. It was big.
How many people at the white wedding?
At the white wedding, no less than 280.
That was big.
No less than 280.
You did it well. I think you must become a wedding planner.
No.
And because I think if you can go and cater for that many people on that price, you're doing very well.
But remember, we cater for a few hundred people for a funeral. Okay. So numbers are neither here nor there.
Well, this is what I'm thinking. We've had the whole funeral conversation. Yeah. So we it's like you get married, you have a funeral, we know how to cater.
Same numbers. Yeah.
But I was also thinking about that woman who said on social media that was the best time of her life and should spend all the money again. I don't come across that often. I think most of the time people say, next time I'm eloping, because of the incredible pressure that brides especially. So the bride has built this day up in her mind to such a huge thing that everything has to be so perfect, and the stress that comes with. And that at the end of the day, it isn't maybe what she was hoping for it to be.
Maya, I actually remember I went to a wedding a couple of years ago. I went with a friend of mine. She had a +1 and I was her +1. And when you go to a wedding and you were just like, hi man, what is going on here? You could hear a pin drop. The tension in that room. Maya, like when you feel bad for the entire day, like you could see that she was holding back the tears because just the amount of pressure there was. It was really one of the most uncomfortable, sad weddings that I had ever been to. So again, you have to really find ways to enjoy yourself, make sure that you have those boundaries.
And I think it is also about saying, what is this about? What is this day about? It's about celebrating the love of two people, of getting other people to celebrate your love, of making commitments to each other. It's not about being on the cover of Vogue magazine, or Instagram photographs. Yeah. And I think if you can take a step back, just breathe and say, it doesn't matter how this turns out. It doesn't matter if the bridesmaid looked like a frumpy old thing because the dress didn't fit properly, or what, all these 101 things that we build up in our minds. It's just saying, let's celebrate and enjoy the moment.
No, I think so, Maya, absolutely.
Before we go on to the actual wedding numbers and what the actual wedding costs, there's a lot of costs before you get married. I mean, you've spoken about Lobola, right? What about the engagement ring? Now, I can tell you that in my, community, the engagement ring is extremely important. Like, it's the first thing. The first thing that when you tell someone you're engaged, they all say, can we see the ring? And somehow the ring indicates how successful this man is. Definitely. So the ring becomes very important. And the poor man is under this immense pressure. I still remember there was a bank that introduced a credit card that gave you a very large credit limit. And I remember interviewing them. It's a private bank. And they said, well, people use it to buy engagement rings. So literally they were using this credit card, right, to be able to put through this massive engagement ring. Now, I do have to tell you, mine is very not like that. I'm not a big diamond and flash person.
You guys were 22 also.
We were 22, but also this ring was made by my friend. Now, for me, that carries so much more than a huge diamond. But that ring is big. Is that similar in?
It never really used to be. I can't remember, especially back then, or even with observing my siblings when they got married. Because obviously we do things traditionally first. So you have to go do the whole Lobola thing. You can't just say, I'm engaged. I mean, your parents are going to look at you like, okay, this is not how we do things, right? So it was never a big part. But now, I don't know. I have my suspicion that social media has something to do with it. Because now you see so many people doing, I said yes, posts. I said yes.
Okay.
So now it's like, oh, what kind of ring did your partner get you? Again, an indicator whether this person is well off or not. And the more bigger it is, the more we're like, oh, you're marrying someone rich. But it was never like that. But I'm seeing more and more and more of it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And these are the costs that build up. These poor couple who are trying to start life. They're trying to buy their first home. They have this, there's a lobola, then there's engagement rings. And, you know, then you've got sort of 2 weddings. I just want to tell you a story. I just remembered it now. You know, you were talking about the white wedding. And this is obviously a relatively new thing as well. I mean, historically, I mean, you know, people used to have traditional weddings.
Yeah.
And I was working with a woman in Money Makeover when I did Money Makeover. And she was saving towards her white wedding. So they had been married customary. They actually had done a court wedding. And they were saving for it. And a couple of years later, I bumped into her again. And I said, so have you had your white wedding?
Yeah.
She said, you know what? By then they'd had kids. And she said, we realized this, we'd rather put this money to our child's education. And that was such an interesting shift about priorities. I suppose because she'd had time to think about it and be married.
But also having saved money, because there's something about saving and saving for months and months. And now you need to spend it on everybody else to eat and go.
Yeah.
And now you have children on top of that. Then it's
so let's talk about these costs that people save for. This 350,000 Rand that this woman spent on her wedding. The dress.
Yeah.
How important is the wedding dress?
I would say very important. I mean, I have people who you will say, and I mean, I guess it's a fair thing to say that, you know, that day is about me. So I must look like, you know, a dream. So people spend lots and lots of money. I mean, we didn't have anything, so I couldn't even bother to go and spend lots of money. I went and found someone who would sew the dress for me. It was a cheaper option. She sewed it for me, and it wasn't one of those famous people. The dress was beautiful, well-fitting. Even for my brides, also, their dresses, I think they cost like $800, Maya.
You know, I mean, considering a wedding dresses go 50,000, you know, you spent 800.
Mine for like 12,000. I think mine was about 12,000. It really was not expensive.
Yeah.
You know, we look back at just how much we spent and how much people are spending now, and how some of our, like the amount of money some of our friends have spent. We significantly, I mean, 120,000 is still a lot of money. And especially for young people starting out in life, that's still significantly quite a high amount. But we look at just how much we saved and try to be thrifty and nifty. But we had a time. We had a blast. I mean, people who came to our wedding, they still say, oh my gosh, it was the most fun wedding ever.
Which goes to show you that you don't have to spend a lot of money to have a blast, right?
Yeah.
I was telling you, one of my favorite weddings that I've ever been to was friends of mine, and they're also on a budget. I think having a budget and not having a lot of money is great because it really makes you think differently.
Yes.
And they had it at a rustic, out in Elgin. There was like a rustic sort of church, and then they had it in the gardens. And they had just a harvest table, but they had beautifully done the fairy lights. And so they'd created a beautiful, intimate atmosphere. And, you know, at not a big cost.
And now, talking about intimacy, how many people did you have at your wedding?
Yeah, you see, this is it. We've got to talk about the invite list.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think at my wedding, there were 50 people.
50?
50. No. This is, remember, we now were paying. There was no one to help us pay. But the pressure, and this is where it gets big, right, is the invite list. And we've spoken about funerals where you don't get an invitation, but I imagine you're allowed to invite people to your wedding. They can't just rock up.
Yeah.
So my mum wasn't in a position to pay, but yet somehow you've got all these friends and relatives that all must now come to your wedding.
Grade 4 school teacher.
Like all these people. So we were in a position where we said, this is all we have. This is the money we have. And this is all we can do. And it had to be accepted. But let me tell you, I had some of my mom's friends, and my mom had some friends there, but not all of them, who would for years later say, yes, I believe your wedding was lovely, but I wasn't there. It is a big deal. So, you know, we spoke earlier, in previous episodes on the funeral about saying, you know, in white culture, you kind of get invited and things like that. It is worse not to be invited to the wedding. Oh, not to be invited to a wedding is
a mortal.
Everybody wants to come to the wedding, and I think they just want to see the bridesmaid. I mean, the bridesmaid, and the wedding, and they all go home. So there's this incredible pressure, and here you are, a young couple, and I was having a look at some costs, and like wedding planner costs. They said an intimate wedding is about 850 rand per head. That's starting, and now you've got all these people and how many people who were at your wedding are you still friends with?
Maya, my mother, my beautiful, wonderful mother, she had her list. Her list was more than my list. Do you understand that? Okay. She had absolutely everyone. And I mean, the thing about Black mothers, they will remind you, remember this person was there when you were young, and they will guilt trip you. They will bring people from church because they want to show that my child is getting married. She's doing the right thing. Everyone. Then remember, we have big families also. So every single person, even the aunts that you don't like, they're going to be there. Okay? Everyone is coming to your wedding. If that person taught you in primary, that person is coming to your wedding. Otherwise, they'll see your mom and get very offended that, oh, I'm not important to your family. That's effectively what it means. The priest, you haven't been to church in many years, but the priest will be invited. So it's a community thing. And I think that's why sometimes I'm grateful for having a traditional wedding. I know it's still costly, because traditional wedding, everyone can come. And remember, again, with that episode of funerals, even people from the community, even those who are homeless, they will come and they'll get a plate. But it's still when I say very contentious, that white wedding list. I mean, contentious. We had a couple of moments where me and my mother, we're at loggerheads until one of my sisters said, guys, come on now. This is not what we're going to do. This is the budget. If you have more money, please, by all means, invite more people. But this is the budget, and that's what we're sticking to. So that list, I do not envy anyone getting married, ever.
And I think there's some fairness to what your sister was saying, is that saying to your mom, if you want to invite all those people, you pay for them. I just have to tell you that in the corner of my eye, I have seen one of our producers nodding his head down. And I happen to know that he's getting married later this year. So I feel like he's listening and he's just wondering how he's going to cope with the aunties. Huh? Am I right?
Go with your budget. Stick with your budget.
So I have to tell you about the aunties, because my neighbor got married, and she was marrying into a coloured family. And there were a lot of aunties. So what they did is they had the church wedding, and they did lots of sandwiches and everything afterwards. And then they went away on a destination kind of thing. So they went, and just the closer family went to this game lodge or whatever. And that was one way of trying to keep the costs down, but still including people. So it feels a little bit like that. And I always wondered, is it acceptable, I don't know, to invite people to the church wedding, but not to the reception afterwards?
I would take it personally. I would take... Actually, I have a friend of mine. She lives abroad, and one of her friends invited her only to the church one and not to the reception or something along those lines. Oh, no. She didn't get invited to the church and something else. She only got invited to the very later part, like she had to go at 9 p.m. or something like that. I wouldn't have gone. I would have sent a gift, because, I mean, am I not important to you?
Yeah. You see, it's contentious. It is so contentious. And this is what pushes up these costs of weddings. It's poor. So that's why I think so many people are now going on destination. Like they'll just go, I know a couple who just flew to Mauritius and got married there. Yeah. And just with a few friends.
But I can bet you with Black parents that, I have a friend of mine. And this is a real story. I have a friend of mine. We grew up together. He's a guy. And he went with his bride-to-be with a couple of friends. I think they flew to Cape Town, somewhere secluded. One of those small towns. They went and bought their dress and shots from Mr. Price. Booked out a part of this place, got married, and invited the mom. Invited the mom. She says he had never seen his mom so mad. So absolutely mad. It's like, for the first year of our marriage, we could not let that go. So again, it's, you want to please your parents in a way I think it's a big part of, you want to be respectful, but at what point does it become too much?
But I think, if I look at it in white culture where the bride's family normally pay for the wedding, if they were paying for the wedding, then they can invite who they want. But I think in the real world where couples are starting out in life and they're paying it for themselves, we've got to be able to put boundaries down. It's not right. It's not fair to put that pressure on young couples starting out. But talking about pressure, and this is why I will stress particularly today, what about the guests? It gets expensive. You've got the kitchen tea, or the bachelorette or whatever that you've got to go to. You've got to buy presents for that. Then you've got to buy a present at the wedding. Then sometimes it's a destination wedding, so you need to fly somewhere to go to that. Then you need to have the clothes. It gets quite pricey.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's a massive trend now where, if you're a bride or bridesmaid, right, if you are part of the bridal party, people have fallen out in terms of their friendships because of being bridesmaids. I mean, I saw one, I think it was on social media, they literally fell out. Their friendships completely ended because then there was expensive wigs, there was expensive makeup, there were expensive dresses that they had to buy out of their own pocket. There was the bridal shower, and now we have to wear the same thing so that we can take the pictures. People have completely fallen out. And I mean, that thing was so big because it started so much conversation around, actually, when does it get too much?
So I think there's pressure on the couple, there's pressure on the guests. So it feels like, why are we doing all of this?
What is it? Say 50% divorce anyway. I'm kidding.
Yeah, 50% end in divorce. Okay, right, that's a really good one. It's a good thing we're going to be talking next about in our next episode of Marriage Contracts. Yeah. But before we go there, we always like to end off with some money tips around how to navigate the space. So I think one of them is, you could elope. That is one option to keep it down and keep it inexpensive.
Not if you're black.
Not if you're black. No, but I think there is you do need to work within a budget. And if you need to invite 500 people, then you're going to have to find a way, like you did, to find a low-cost venue and an inexpensive way of doing that. Or you got to go my option and just have a really small wedding. Whichever way you go for it. But one thing you must not do is borrow money. And I'm going to tell you that I came across a blog by a lender who will not be named that said, we, the lender, can help you prepare for your dream wedding with a personal loan up to 300,000 Rand with flexible payment terms. So they used an example of a 250,000 Rand loan as a comfortable budget.
Comfortable.
And showed that they said 250,000 Rand would be kind of what a comfortable budget would be. And they said if you had to borrow 150,000 Rand of that, you would be paying it off for 5 years at 5,500 Rand a month. For 5 years, your budget is going to go to 5,500 Rand a month for 5 years to pay off a wedding. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Definitely not worth it. Absolutely not worth it. And for me, it makes my stomach just get into a knot, thinking that a lot of people are starting their lives and they're starting with debt from a wedding. And oftentimes people don't even speak about money. It's just making decisions on the spot without saying actually what we want. So I would never, ever recommend, if you want to get married, start saving, push out the wedding for another year or something like that. But getting a loan for your wedding, absolutely 1,000% not worth it.
Or do what this woman on my Money Makeover program did, and they had a court wedding, so they were officially married, and they saved towards the white wedding, which landed up not happening. But the point is, there are ways to manage that. And I suppose also, we're talking about ways of cutting costs. One of the big things, and I was actually helping my niece look at wedding venues, midweek, 50% cheaper, or certainly in Cape Town, if you have a winter wedding. So it's a lot cheaper. So venue hire can be cut by 50% depending on when you have the wedding. And of course, another one is dress hire, which I did. And, I know.
I mean, when are you going to wear that thing again? I still have it.
And how many times you worn it?
Maya, that one time. One time and one time only. It's sitting somewhere in my wardrobe. I've never seen it. And but I paid $12,000 for it.
Yeah. And what other tips would you give somebody who's facing this right now?
I think, again, it goes back to communication, right? Just have really, first of all, with your partner, say, okay, what do we really want? What will make us happy? You know, what actually
the
makes
problem
us
is you
happy?
don't want to have that conversation with a man. You know what? No wedding. Really well. And how can there be 5 shades
No,
of white?
come on,
You know,
come on.
do you want this white tablecloth or that one or the cream or like it's all the same
I think
color?
on the budget. I think agree on the budget and say, okay, we are going to stick to this. But I think actually set parameters for yourselves. What will you not do? I think most of the time we think about everything we want and what we're willing to do. But ask yourselves, what are we not willing to do? For us, we're not willing to get ourselves into debt. For us, we're not willing to spend more than we actually had. So we didn't use credit card, we didn't use overdraft, none of those. And where you can cut back and be stern with your parents, just do so.
Have boundaries. Have a sister who steps up for you.
Yes, yes. I love my sisters.
Well, we've spoken a lot about the cost of a wedding, but of course, one thing nobody ever talks about or even thinks about is the marriage contract. And in our next episode, you really got to join us. We're having an expert family lawyer on who's going to talk about several court cases that have happened recently that have actually changed the marriage contract landscape, but also why it is so incredibly important to have a marriage contract and when you sign that marriage contract.
Oh, yeah. Especially for us, people with Lobola and that conversation is going to be amazing. And she is brilliant.
So join us.